Do you think Walter Sofronoff was inclined to bias because he was liaising so much with Janet Albrechtsen?
No, Peter, I personally don't. It's one can seriously query the wisdom of what he did in dealing with the press, but largely only because it gives rise to issues like this, which to my mind are probably more perceived than real. Just because you deal with a journalist, even though that journalist was fairly notoriously a partisan for Bruce Lehrman, I don't think it means that you're going to be biased. He also had dealings with the ABC, and if anything, the ABC's bias was the other way in favour of Brittany Higgins. And also, Sofronoff was an experienced Queensland Court of Appeal judge. He was the president of the Queensland Court of Appeal. I find it a little bit disquieting, the extent of the contacts with Janet Albrechtsen. My own attitude when I was still practicing as a barrister was that you had a duty, or I had a duty, to make sure that the press was put in a position where they could report the case that I was doing accurately. And I can see that as a significant factor. But although it's a little bit different in this case, there wasn't anything particularly difficult in what the inquiry was doing, and whether it was necessary from that point of view. I have my, as I said, it's more I think a perceived problem than a real one.
Yeah, I've always wondered why judges aren't more open in Australia to talking to journalists on the basis that the more journalists are able to look inside the workings of an institution, the more likely it is not to stuff things up.
Yes, although remember that judges do actually give reasons. They sit in open court. Anyone can go along. A journalist can sit there. The journalist can see what the judge does. Then argument is put on each side for the outcome that each side wants. Then the judge goes away and gives reasons in writing for the decision that he's come up with. It's a very open and transparent process as it is. You see, it's not like the process in which judges engage is vastly more transparent than what, say, politicians do. They have debates in Parliament, but none of them ever gives their own personal reasons why they're voting for one particular piece of legislation, and most of them are only voting because their party has told them to vote in a particular way.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if so. I think there's general acceptance that the first trial, the Bruce Berman trial, was a schmozzle, partly due to Shane Drumgold, and I just wonder if you think that if journalists had been able to peer inside what was happening between him and the police and then him and the court process, if the outcome might have been different.
The problem with that, though, is that was a jury trial. Just say a journalist did a story about dealings between the Drumgold, the DPP, the police, and say Brittany Higgins, the complainant. The risk of a jury seeing material that was inadmissible and therefore prejudicing and therefore constituting a contempt would be very, very real indeed.
So I get that, but the allegation against Drumgold, as according to Walter Sofronoff, was malpractice.
Yeah.
Again,
in fact, a series of items of malpractice.
Yeah, yeah. Do you agree with Sofronoff as an outsider?
Oh, if Sofronoff's factual findings are right, yes, I do. Sofronoff found that he'd misled the trial judge, Lucy McCallum. If he's right, that's very serious. If Sofronoff's findings are correct, he's manifestly unfit to be the director of public prosecutions for the ACT. No question.
So I wonder if Drumgold would be more accountable to good quality journalism if these things would have been avoided. That's my point.
But
the role,
again,
I mean, I don't. You know far better than me the role of journalists in a democracy.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering
as
about
well
that.
as you. Yeah, but the problem with that though is that none of that could be published before the trial was over. In which case it'd be stale. It'd be stale news.
The argument would be that Drumgold should never have been appointed because he wasn't up to the task.
Yeah, that's true. But then no one knew that until after the debacle that trial turned out to be.
Because he was largely underexposed to the media.
Is
the logic.
Is the logic, yeah. But again, I don't think you can have journalists intervening directly in the process of enforcement of the criminal law, except by reporting what they're told by the police, as they do, and what they see going on in open courtrooms. It's
right.
just too risky.
So would you have ever released the report to journalists, as Sofronoff did, ahead of the people who retained him to do the report? Breach the embargo?
Personally, no, I wouldn't. But that's my decision. On the other hand, I can see merit, just like it was at least in the old days with the federal budget, where it was given to journalists under embargo, so they could actually read it and report it accurately when it was actually finally made public. Now there's a very strong public interest in doing that. Now, which is what I assume that Sofronoff was doing when he gave it to Albrechtsen and to the ABC. The other thing too is that there's a particular complication in the ACT, which is that it's up to the chief minister to decide when and whether the report itself becomes public. Now, I understand the Australians' position is they didn't disclose the copy they got from Walter Sofronoff. They got a copy of his report from some other source. Now, if they did, well, that's just good journalism. But probably, I think I probably said enough about that. I said my own view, I wouldn't do it myself, not for something like this.
Well, the perception there is that Sofronoff didn't trust the chief minister to release it in a promptly.
That is certainly an available interpretation, but the law says it's up to the chief minister, and we're all bound by the law. So, as I said, I wouldn't have done it in that situation. Although, as I said, I can mount a good defence of Sofronoff for, as I said, for wanting to make sure that the reporting of that report was accurate. So, yeah.
Well, Bruce McClintock, we miss you in court, I've just got to say. It was fun watching you and lovely to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you, Peter. I'm glad you're keeping yourself out of trouble.